The show is Africa Daily on Africa Global Radio 218 GMT time now for our discussion zone. As I said, we spoke to Mustapha Abdullah, a senior researcher at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center here in our base, Ghana. And like I said, we talked about issues of peace on the regional blocks of the continent of Africa. He started by talking about the impediments of peace, went ahead to talk about how Africans would want to, handle their own, internal issues in terms of the lack of peace and there's chaos, conflicts here and there. They rather prefer the African approach system rather than having, foreigners or Westerners intervening, trying to come up with the solutions of our own problems. So we understand our problems, so let's handle it. Here's what he had to say on that particular one. We'll be right back. So, what are some of the impediments to peace on the continent of Africa?
Now, first of all, let me greet all listeners. Now, when you talk about impediment to peace in West Africa, one's mind is immediately directed at issues of governance.
Right.
If you look across West African countries, one of the challenges that we are facing that is undermining our democracy and peace is bad governance. If you look at Yes, as I indicated, if you look at across Africa, governance is a major challenge in terms of how do we address issues of poverty? How do we address issues of unemployment? How do you address issues of marginalization? How do we address issues of corruption? And these are issues that bedevil a lot of West African countries. And if you look across West Africa, even countries that pride themselves as having established and consolidated their democracy, they face these governance challenges. You can take the example of Ghana. Issues of corruption is a challenge in Ghana. Issues of youth unemployment is a challenge in Ghana. Issues of poverty is a challenge in Ghana. And these issues, whenever they are present in a particular country, they undermine the peace and stability of that country. And so across West African countries, take from Nigeria to Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and the relatively peaceful countries like Ghana, Benin, and Togo, you realize that issues of governance is a challenge to us. And whenever there are issues of governance, you can bet me that there is always issues of instability and lack of peace. And so generally, this is what I can say in terms of issues that actually undermine or constitute an impediment to peace in West Africa.
Right. You mentioned West Africa. I want to believe this is also peculiar to the southern regions as well as the eastern regions as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. When you go to the southern part of Africa, you realize that a number of countries have a certain level of development.
Right.
You can take South Africa, you can take Botswana, you can take Namibia, and a host of other countries in those countries. But again, even though some of them are a bit developed, but again, if you talk in comparative terms, they still face these kind of challenges, and therefore, in terms of peace, issues of governance, issues of relative to corruption, relative to youth unemployment, continue to undermine their peace and stability. Even though when you do a comparative analysis, you realize that certain regions are better off in terms of their development. When you go to Northern African countries, yes. Lately, they all had Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was one of the issues of governance actually brought about this Arab Spring. But again, in terms of development, when you talk of Algeria, when you talk of Morocco, they are better off as compared to other countries. But again, they also have their unique challenges in terms of issues of radicalism, issues of jihadism.
Right.
And these are also issues that always undermine peace and stability across these regions.
Good. So one thing that you mentioned that's more of like is the core to the whole problem is governance. So here we're looking at bad governance. Is that what we're looking at?
Yes.
All right, great. So let's also talk about intervention, because if as a result of bad governance brings about the lack of peace and peaceful coexistence and everything, that is also another issue. Let's talk about intervention. Now, some African countries would prefer, or most African countries would prefer, an all-African approach to, destabilization in countries rather than, talking about let's get a UN peace troops to intervene. What are some of the arguments around this place?
Now, if you also look at, yes, there is a statement by African Union. African Union is a continental organization that actually is established to ensure integration and peace and stability in Africa.
Okay.
One of their key statements is that African solution to African problems. And therefore, what that means is that if there are any problem within any West African countries, is the Organization of African Unity, also now known as African Union, as well as sub-regional organizations like ECOWAS, like IGAD, like the East African Community, and a host of others,
right,
that are supposed to actually intervene and address the challenges within those West African countries or African countries that are facing problems. But again, consistently, you realize that these African countries are tied to the apron strings of our colonial masters, our European Union, developed countries like France, like UK, like the United States of America. So when you are so much tied to them in terms of the resources that you use to address some of these challenges, most often than not, they will determine what they want you to deal with.
Okay.
And so there are in a number of cases where African Union has to intervene and address the situation. But because they go to these partners to collect money or to seek for funds, then these partners also bring their strategic interest to bear on the resolution of these conflicts. And therefore, you realize that the African Union, even though they have this issue of African solution to African problems, precisely because they go in to look for funds from these partners, they are not able to actually implement what they feel are the real issue that will address their challenges, because the strategic interests of these partners come in and actually undermine the effort of African solution to African problems.
Right. So there's in as much as we are keen in solving our own problems on the continent, there is still that aspect where the Westerners find themselves or their way through to also intervene in problem solving, because we sort of like owe them that allegiance in a way.
Great. That is. Yeah.
Right. Let's go up north, the regions of Africa. Now, okay, so I think this is going to be our next go-to. But then let's just begin the conversation with the first two issues that he touched on right here, on the issues of peace in the regional blocs on the continent of Africa, and that was a senior researcher, Mustapha Abdullah, at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center here in Albies, Ghana. Let me start with Hafiz. Hafiz,
Barry,
how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Great. The ultimate commodity one can ask for is peace.
Absolutely.
You know, across and of course even within ourselves and all of that. But interesting. Start out with Mr. Mustapha Abdullah. On the impediments, and then the all African approach and what have you. But then let's hear.
Yeah, I enjoyed his submissions a lot. I mean, I don't know. I'm beginning to understand that, or think that I enjoy geopolitics a lot.
Yes. I know, right?
But, I mean, he started his submission by talking about bad governance and saying that it's the root cause of all the situations, all the instability that we see around.
Right.
And rightly so. I mean, when you talk, we are so comfortable in dealing with issues surrounding peace. Usually we are tackling the symptoms rather than the root cause of it. And I think bad governance is actually the root cause of issues surrounding instability.
So what are
here
some
and
of the
there
impediments
that
to
we face every now and then? And so he definitely touched on the bad governance bit. Now there also the points about also being tied to the apron strings of colonial masters is one I found quite interesting. Now, if you listen to the whole conversation, you realize that he kept hammering on the fact that we don't have enough resources to actually champion some of these peacekeeping operations that you normally would like. Now, there's no denying the fact that the continent's military suffer from a lot of resource and capacity constraints. Constraints in terms of training. We're talking about training, transportation, logistics, readiness, you name it. These are all issues that we face when you talk about trying to fight in restoring peace. Now, you don't have to look too deep to find an example,
Okay.
of the situation he's talking about, and being tied to the apron strings of colonial masters.
Mm.
Take the Mali situation
Okay.
that just happened.
Yeah, yeah. The coup,
You,
huh?
yes, you had
Mm.
5 nations calling themselves the G5 that
Mm-hmm.
tried to tackle this and failed. You had Niger,
Mm-hmm.
Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, and Mauritania,
Right.
and these 5 countries couldn't. Now it gets worse from there. ECOWAS came into the picture, promising more than 3,000 troops
Okay.
to help the situation. That did not come. Why? Because they were still arguing about how many troops, how many logistics, blah blah blah. There was a lot of internal wrangling.
Okay.
So that plan or whatever it is didn't materialize.
Right.
And so it didn't see the light of day. Now,
Mm.
you don't even have to take my word for it. Now, according to a study by the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research and the
Okay.
Institute for Security Studies, now here's their take on what happens. Now, they say that African countries are
Okay.
uh, capable of deploying a battalion, are not capable of deploying a battalion or more for peace operations without significant assistance.
Are not.
Yes.
Okay.
So, in addition, most do not possess specialized units with sufficient equipment or expertise to provide such necessary services as engineering, communications, medical, or movement control. So,
Right.
this is what the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research and
Okay.
Institute for
It's
Security
saying.
Studies is saying
Right.
about it. So, there's some research around that.
Mm.
Now, if you look at the intervention of even all these colonial masters,
Okay.
I mean, not for a second should you sit and think that they are doing it from the kindness of their hearts.
Yeah.
No,
There's always an end game, huh?
there's an end game. There's always something.
Yeah.
What is it they're after? Because at the end of the day, well, I mean, there's a reason the African countries didn't even participate.
Yeah.
Some way, somehow.
Their hands are tied.
Why is that? Then some ways, somehow, we are sitting down and thousands of miles away, you had France quickly jump into the picture.
Yeah. And I think that actually sparked up the issue because the people themselves in Mali said they didn't want the intervention of
Now,
France
here's the
in the
thing.
business.
There's something by Catherine Soul, a member of the German Council on Foreign Relations.
Mm.
Now, here's a take on France. Now, she said that France has interest in securing resources, particularly oil and uranium, which the French energy company Arriva has been extracting for decades in
In-
neighboring Niger.
Hmm.
So forget about all the humanitarian
Nah,
reasons you hear on
the
TV.
smiles are all facade, eh?
Exactly. Now, definitely, you see the economic interest
Yeah.
laid bare.
Yeah.
So you see some of these things, and it's just annoying, really.
Yeah.
Because, and what it happens is that when this situation persists, what you have is some sort of savior complex that
Yeah.
comes around, with these guys when they even talk to you. I mean, it's the reason their foreign minister was telling us in 2019, telling Malians that, I mean, they shouldn't get comfortable with the presence of the French troops because they are not going to be there forever. The nerve, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the situation you've
Mm.
created. Okay, so each time they come in there, sometimes there are issues there you don't even understand.
Okay.
Even still on the French, not too long ago, we were talking about the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and their business in there.
Mm.
I think more than one on that they read about the French military and their operation called Turquoise. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and it's
yeah.
supposed to be a humanitarian safe zone where no one is supposed to be touched.
Unfortunately.
And guess what? People got killed.
Mm.
So you ask questions.
Yeah.
And even the guy at the RTLM owner, Felicien Kabuga, where was he eventually found after 26 years? In France. So some of these guys, when they come into the picture, trust me, don't for a second think that they don't have ulterior motives. They do.
Right, interesting. Thank you, Hafiz, for the starter. And we're talking regional peace in the regional blocks on the continent of Africa. As I said, we had an interview earlier with Mustapha Abdullah, senior researcher at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Let me take Epi's take on this first bit of the interview. Yeah.
I think the main point I wanted to talk about was the second point Hafiz made about the fact that we're tied to the colonial masters.
Okay.
And I
They're
was
not our colonial
essentially-
masters. They used to colonize us, and now what do we call them? The Westerners, I think. They still have colonial masters. They still have like also power over us or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, the colonialists. Thank you. Yeah, use that one
So
like
the
that.
colonialists.
Yeah, yeah.
So I, for example, was really bothered when I found that, I mean, in all of France, is there a place they actually mine gold?
In France,
Yeah.
not that According to the little reading I have made, I don't think so.
There's no gold mine there.
Yeah,
But then they have like a gold reserve.
yeah,
And it's coming from where?
from Mali, right?
And I'm just feeling disturbed. I mean, if we look at this whole Congo thing that came at a point in time,
Yeah,
that, I mean, we're trying to save the lives of the children because they were just pulling people, husbands, and to the point where there was
yeah,
deaths, actually, not just one, multiple,
Mm.
in different cases, just to get cobalt.
right.
And these people were mining this,
Mm.
and it wasn't because they wanted to, but then you find these countries, these superpowers, supporting and financing all these things. And the painful part is the way they actually brand it and beautifully paint
Yeah.
this humanitarian work. You know, let's do this here. But then not to get the media's attention here, let's start this project over here.
Okay.
So whilst everybody is focusing on this project, this is actually what we're doing.
There's something going on, yeah?
There's no source of humanity in actually any of the humanitarian projects they actually partake in, because once we are helping you with something, we're taking something. And almost everything they have, everything they use, they're taking from us because we have it.
Right. So on that note, they would say, okay, we have bring you all the necessary supports that you need, but in the other hand, there's something that there's an ulterior motive, as I have
There's no
made
humanity in
mention
it.
of. Okay, thank you. Let me hear Mami's take on this one so we can proceed to the next bit of the interview. Mami,
Barry.
we're here. And problem, eh?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he made mention of how usually most of the conflicts that arise
Right.
as a result of bad governance.
governance.
And I agree 100%. Because if we live in a nation, the people are fine and everything is working perfectly in the nation.
I mean, I don't. Not
Who
even
is
close
going?
to exactly.
Who is
Yeah.
going to
We can have it
say,
all good all the time.
I
but
want to demonstrate,
Yeah.
and I want to do this, and I want to do that.
everybody wants to rest in
So
their
it
home.
all boils down to the kind of leaders that we vote into power. I mean, sometimes they come and then their manifestos are all nice. And it's like, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that. And they get into power and it's like, it's a different
I
story.
like the fact that you said we vote into, but we still keep on voting for them. That's the thing. I don't get it, but
That's just humans. I mean, I
You
remember,
know?
I don't know if I told you one time,
yeah,
somebody was telling me about how in a certain electoral area
yeah.
was for a certain party and if they should even replace
The human
the
with
human with the bag of rice,
They would vote for the
would
bag of
vote for
rice.
the bag of rice.
okay. That's good. We need to write a story about that. And publish it.
And then
Okay.
about some African nations wanting not wanting interventions from
Yeah, they want to
these
handle their own business.
foreign powers.
Yeah.
I think just like Hafiz and Epi said,
Mm.
it's because they know all of these aids and all of these help that they are getting will always comes with ulterior motives. Because somebody once told me that America has nothing. And America is what it is today because of the things they got from nations that have so much.
Right.
So it's because they know if I give you a bag of rice, I would take back one piece, like 2 acres of land from you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I like that. Thank you very much. And of course, like they say, all this is the roots of bad governance. Because if things are not really going on well, that's when you seek for
That's
intervention,
when we are
poverty,
that
this
is
blah blah
when
blah.
we are seeing
And then
people
they
want
give
to
you-
demonstrate and they're
They
saying
give you
fix the nation. 'cause
ultimatum and what have
we
you,
don't have
conditions and all of
jobs.
that.
And
Okay, right. Let's hear what he also had to say. We also had to go over to Northern Africa. I mean, you know, the intervention in terms of trying to bring about peaceful coexistence from the Northern African regions, countries over there. Not to say that they are not active in other international peacekeeping missions. They are, but the participation, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, to some extent, it's not that very open to one to see. But he also spoke about that briefly, as well as went ahead to talk about the activities of some terrorist group that have been terrorizing most parts of Africa, and of course talked about the solution, what can be done. Talked about there can be a total neutralizing of these terrorist group, but that we're looking at the long term. Made mention, gave some recommendation on what can be done within the short term period. We'll be right back. Let's listen to the rest. Let's go up north, the regions of Africa. Now, what is actually stopping, correct me if I am wrong, northern African countries from intervening in, some issues of conflicts, maybe a harsh word to use, but in some African countries, sub-Saharan African countries, West African countries, what is actually stopping it? Because we know they are contributors, to the United Nations peacekeeping mission and all of that. But what is actually stopping them from intervening in some African countries?
Yes, Africa. We have a union, and like I indicated, African Union is an organization where all these North African countries are part.
Right.
You take Egypt. You can take Egypt. You can take Libya. You can take Morocco, Algeria, and all these countries are part of the African Union in terms of intervening to address situations. And so unilaterally, we don't expect these countries to unilaterally intervene and to address the challenges. They have to come together collectively because they all subscribe to the ideals of the continental organizations.
Okay.
If there are issues within their region, then the regional body within North Africa would then have to intervene by the protocols that have established all these organizations. And so if there are problems within the sub-Saharan African countries, what we would expect from North African countries is to rally behind the continental body to be able to address the challenges. You realize that when Gaddafi was in power, Libya was a major contributor to the African Union Peace Fund.
True.
Egypt was also a major contributor to African Union Peace Fund.
Right.
And so these were key actors that contributed to the resolution of a lot of conflict within West African sub-region. And so that is what we expect these organizations to do, to contribute to funds.
Okay.
If you look at the United Nations, U.S., for instance, contribute close to 20% of the funds. And then a few other countries like UK, France also contribute. And so, in terms of development countries, some countries are better than others. Right. And so that's what we expect from Northern African countries, the giants within the region, to be able to contribute significantly to African Union so that we don't get tied to the apron string of the colonial masters and other development partners.
Okay.
Because if we are able to do that, then we will take our own solution into our own hands and be able to address our challenges the way we want it.
Okay. You mentioned Gaddafi of blessed memory being one of those, when he was leading Libya, being one of those major contributors, Egypt as well. And you're saying we expect. So are we looking at now they've actually cut some of these, or they've reduced it, or it's not really coming as it used to be? Is that the case?
Yeah, that is the case precisely because Libya itself has a lot of challenges
at the moment.
At the backyard of Libya. Libya is faced with issues of radicalism, is faced with issues of terrorism.
That's right.
It is faced with the issues of who is governing the country. We have Khalif Haftar, who is taking part of the country, and then we also have other recognized government in certain part of Libya. And so Libya is in complete status, and so one would not expect Libya now to be a major bankroller of the African Union. It is rather the African Union and other key actors within the continent that will have to come together to help Libya get out of these woes.
Okay.
Before Libya can come back to its feet and be able to contribute as he used to do in Gaddafi. One of the reasons why perhaps even Gaddafi was booted out of power was the fact that he was more Pan-Africanist in his approach to governance, and therefore didn't want to see the fact that the Western powers were dominating in terms of or interfering in our development.
Right.
And that is one of the reasons why when the time came that Gaddafi has to be booted out of power, we realized that the Western powers all came together and made sure that he was booted out of power because they saw him as an impediment to their strategic interests within the West Africa, within Africa.
But I'm very interested in finding out what have we done, or what have we done in that regard, or what did we do to actually prevent such a mishap from happening in Libya, as African Union generally? Because considering the fact that Libya was a giant contributor, what did we do, or what didn't we do?
Yeah, a number of things. When the Libyan crisis started, African Union started with mediation.
Okay.
They thought we have to use mediation to be able to address the challenges in Libya. But again, while African Union was proposing mediation as a continental body, there were a lot of differences within the member states. You get certain countries like Zimbabwe and few others who were supporting Libya. You get countries like Ethiopia who were not supporting Libya. You get countries like Nigeria. Or we have about 3 different blocs within the African member states that have different positions about the situation in Libya. And therefore, there was no collective approach by the member states, even though African Union itself actually adopted a mediation approach. But again, if you look at that time, there were a number of African countries within the Security Council. You know, apart from the permanent members, we always have additional 10 members. About 3 or 4 countries, African countries, were on the Security Council members. So when they were voting for the intervention in Libya, some of them abstained. But again, some of them also, behind the scene, were forced by these Western powers to be able to convince them to support their agenda of actually putting Gaddafi out of power. So there was a whole lot of geopolitics
going on.
Gaddafi was power. And then whenever we have such geopolitics, you know, these African countries look at their economic interests. These are the countries that support us. And therefore, most often than not, when their interest is at stake, you realize that they bow, and that's one of the challenges. And that is why I will come back to my issues of governance. When we are able to address our developmental challenges, we will reduce dependence on these Western partners. Now we also reduce their influence and interference in the way we do our things.
Okay, thank you. Let's get on now to my final question. My final 2 questions. Let's talk about the activities of terrorist groups, you know, in Africa. Of course, the notable ones we know of. They are what you call the Al-Shabaab, the Tuareg rebels, Boko Haram, just to mention a few. So what are the threats we are looking at of the activities of these terrorist groups in Africa?
Yes, the terrorist groups in Africa have mutated over the years. Initially, we saw them operating around Algeria, then they move on to Nigeria, and now if you look across the African continent, you see them operating in Mali, in Niger,
Burkina Faso,
and a host of other countries. And there is increasing fear that if we do not put measures in place, they can move to the coastal countries like Ghana. We can move to the coastal countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin. Already, we have seen movement from Burkina Faso towards the coastal states. And so there is increasing fear that if we do not put measures in place, they will spread to other coastal states within West Africa. And so these are issues, the development of these extremists, first and foremost, are issues of ideology. They are also issues of governance. And so you realize that, yes, there are ideology of certain, for instance, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, who want to see control a caliphate and try to spread Islamic ideologies. But again, these countries where these ideologies are being sent are countries that face a lot of developmental challenges. And so, for instance, we went to Mali to interview a number of United Nations officers who are in MINUSMA. And then they were telling us that, no, it is not a religion per se that is the problem of extremism in Mali. The issues of governance, issues of underdevelopment. Because there are instances where the terrorists will come in and then try to convince you with $500 that they want you to go and launch an attack and kill certain group of people. And then people who agree to take those $500 and go and kill 20, 30 people. And then the conclusion of our interview was that we shouldn't look more at the religion aspects of it. But it is issues of underdevelopment, issues of marginalization. When you move across these countries, you go to certain areas, you don't even get water to drink, you don't have access to education, you don't get access to health. And so we have terrorist groups who are serving as governments in these regions, providing them health services, providing them water, providing them food. And so governments across some of these regions have shared their governmental responsibility, allowing the terrorists to take over and to actually support these people who are basically poor who are living in underdevelopment environment.
I love Africa Global Radio.
Okay, still live on the Africa Daily Show, and I am Barry Musa, still playing the early interview I had with Mr. Mustapha Abdullah, senior researcher at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center here in Albania. He's going to talk about issues of impediments of a peace in Africa, approaches to owning and intervening in our own issues earlier that I played, and of course looked at the activities of terrorist group on the continent of Africa and the interventions of Northern Africa as well, and how they used to be major players in terms of their quota to the African Union. Hafiz.
Yeah, in the second part of the conversation, I think you started by asking him about
the contributions
the
of Northern
contribution,
African
yes,
countries,
North
yeah.
African countries and everything. And he sort of he answered it the way I suspected it that he would. That I mean, they can't act on their own accord. They definitely would have to operate in the confines of certain regional blocks,
right.
And rightly so. That is so because you wanted to see how see their presence in continental
exactly,
peacekeeping
yeah.
missions and everything. Now he also made mention of how he went on to talk about the Libya situation. And
Right.
I found it interesting how the conversation
Went, yeah.
But it was quite interesting. The Libya situation is a peculiar one, and
I think there was a massive failing
very
of
yeah.
Africans.
I mean, and what I gathered from his submission is that we seem to be united on paper, but when it comes to actually working
the talk
then
is
it
not
becomes-
there.
It becomes problematic.
I mean, 54 African nations,
Remember
for
when
God's sake.
I just used that example of the Malian situation, where
Right.
ECOWAS promised and failed them. Yes, 3,000 troops.
So what was the use of, so what's the, like, one would ask, so what was the use if because if you couldn't
Because you promise someone, and then at the end of the day, you say logistics. How many? Okay, so who's contributing what? Who's bringing this? Then it becomes
Yeah.
a problem. Then the whole thing, dissolves. He had to call the French president to
Can you imagine?
to solicit for help.
and I think that actually,
Then in the Libya situation, you had all these divisions.
Yeah.
Some supporting Libya and Gaddafi and what he's doing.
Right.
Others are taking the back seat and like, oh, okay, we don't like what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. And you saw the whole mess that they created. And so for me, I mean, we have bigger problems than that. Then later the conversation went on into terrorism.
Yep.
The situation of Boko Haram.
Yep.
Al-Shabaab and all that. And we've seen their activities across the continent, and it largely boils down to one thing: poverty. That's it. Okay, never mind this, this troop about religion and whatnot.
yeah,
Stoking
yeah,
religious sentiments.
extremism and all of that.
It's all about poverty.
Poverty.
Okay, if you watch the operations of Boko Haram, Jamaat what Al-Sunnah the Dawah Jihad,
Yeah.
that's actually what they call them. It's the Boko Haram is just the English version.
Yeah.
But yes. So, I mean, if you watch the way they operate, from the way they even recruit, there's this. It's from the Al-Majrun they take.
Yeah.
Their
Those
people.
those begging on the streets,
Exactly,
huh?
begging
Yeah.
on the streets.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost so much. I
Because
think
a number of them in some parts of northern
Look,
Nigeria.
in 2013, I think some boys were arrested, and they claim that they were offered, I think, $30, then 5,000 naira then, to go burn some houses.
Can you imagine?
Yes, some even
And they would gladly do it.
drive-by shoots. So how do $30?
They would gladly do it.
Yes, in Ghanaian cities, we are talking now what? Okay, currently we'll say 150 or so. But
Oh
I mean,
dear.
it's so sad, just how easy it is to
Yeah.
influence. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's just poverty. People
It's
just
just
trying
poverty.
to live or
I mean, he
survive.
made mention, given the interview they had in Mali, giving someone $500 to go
$500.
blow up a certain group of people. Why wouldn't you do it?
And they use all
Right.
kinds of people anyway. So.
All right, we're running out of time, but let me quickly take my Epi's taking Mami so we can run. I believe we'll just be stealing into the next hour a bit for Mami. Yes. But Epi, real quick.
I think we should stand properly. We should know what we stand for, because we can't just say we're Africans, we want to do what's African, and then when it comes down to what it takes, we actually
don't.
sell out our own people. So let's be real, let's be serious, and let's do what we actually believe in, and
Okay.
stop being all talk and ideological and Africa, and we do nothing.
We do nothing. Okay, Mami.
Barry. Just like Epi said, let's.
So she said they sell out. Sold out some of our people. But it's true,
mean,
you know,
I don't-
because it just dawned on me. Out of all of these countries we have in Africa, we couldn't intervene on the situation in Libya.
But have you seen how most of the leaders that prevented or that had ideologies that would prevent our ex-colonial masters from intervening in our affairs? Have you noticed the pattern of how most of them were wiped off the face of the earth? It's like then you talk about it, you don't want to go into conspiracy theories.
Exactly.
But they are there.
Exactly.
So I believe, especially with this whole terrorist thing, the governments should do better for their people.
Generally, yeah. Because if they're
Because
okay.
if I am a university graduate and I'm employed and I'm earning some good kwacha at the end of the month,
I like that. Kwacha.
no one would come and entice me with $30 to go kill people I don't know anything about.
Exactly.
So it's just our government should do better. They should stop thinking about their pockets for once and do better for the people.
Don't be selfish, be selfless, and remember the people who put you in the position that you are today. Be accountable to them and provide them with the basic necessary, life, needing things.